Welcome to Horizons of Thought. Today I'm going to talk about the mismatch between what academics say they believe and the realms in which they embody, and then what they can do about it. So let me explain what I mean by that gobbledygook. If you're an athlete and you're competing in the Olympics, you know that the rewards for all the competition and all the work you do mostly go to the very few who get gold, silver, or bronze. And most other people who don't do really well don't prosper as much. It is a concentration of benefit with a whole lot of people competing for big prizes at the end. This is called a tournament model, and it is an extremely difficult, competitive environment to be in. If you're an athlete, you have to work and do an awful lot of activity. You have to practice, you have to train, you have to be disciplined with your mind and body, often for many years or even decades, in order to achieve your goals. And the odds of succeeding are very low because athletics tends to reward only a few people at the top with the biggest prizes. You, as an athlete, quite often will decide that this is worth it anyways. You know the system that you're in, and the benefits of the actual training and the actual hard work on the body and mind are themselves worthwhile. So many people who participate in athletic competition are aware of how their competitions are structured, and to a certain degree have made peace with it. They may not be particularly comfortable with lack of income or other difficulties in life, but they try to find some other solutions to it, and they work and they play very hard in order to succeed. Now, academics obviously work very hard to do what they're doing too, but what I've seen over the years is that many talk about believing in more egalitarian systems like exist in industry and especially in government work, or heavily unionized work, where the wages are flatter, they're given across the board, and while there is always going to be a reward for excellence and people who do the very best, they are imagining a world in which a lot of people prosper reasonably well for the work they do. This is extremely common in the case of doctors, for instance, who join these medical boards. The medical boards give all doctors a reasonable amount of authority. It's hard to get into medical school. Once you do well, you can go out and you can make a decent living no matter who you are. This is not true of a lot of what goes on in academia today. A lot of what goes on in academia today is a tournament model like it is in sports, where most of the rewards go to a very few people who've published and done well and gotten quite lucky. And a lot of other people are increasingly finding themselves in sessional jobs, temporary jobs, postdocs, the kinds of things that don't necessarily pay as well and make it harder to go on and continue being an academic. There's a lot of people in these situations, and only a few people in tenure track positions or tenured positions that are compensated well. It's a lot like what goes on in sports, not quite as severe, but a lot like that. So if you don't believe in a model like that, you are going to run into problems. And so there are three things that I would say to any academic who's thinking about continuing on, doing a PhD, trying to pursue an academic career. And that is, you have a choice, three-way choice. Are you going to embrace the tournament model system that you're in? Are you going to try to fight to change it and make sure that you are incorporated into a system that is counter to some of these trends that have been going on? Or maybe you might decide as time goes on that you want to exit and leave. And I'm going to start with the first one. When you talk about tournament models, it's quite often to think of them as very depressing because only a few people get most of the rewards. But if you're an academic and you want to pursue this, then one way is actually just to do your very, very best on that front, to publish a lot, to make sure that you publish in top journals and publish frequently, that you write books a lot, that you make sure that you work all of the angles that you can work in grants, in postdocs, you name it, to make sure that you're going to be one of those few people at the top. It seems, you might think to yourself, isn't that what all academics are doing? But not always. In a game like this, you have to make sure that you're producing the articles, you have to make sure that you're getting your space out there, and you have to make sure that you're working extremely hard at what it is you're doing. And it's not always so easy to do. But if you want to participate in that system, you've got to often give up a lot of your other activities. I've found as an academic, I read fiction less than I used to. I know a lot of other people end up working evenings and weekends. It can be very difficult. But that is one route to embrace the nature of the tournament model, to recognize that you're there to try to do the very best for the field, not just for yourself. So, ways you can embrace it. Number one, recognize that all that work isn't just about your benefit and the possibility of doing well. It's about making sure that when you publish, it's useful to the most number of academics and the most number of people in the community as possible. When you work for your grants, you dare to make sure that you honor the universities and honor the country that's giving you this rather large amount of tax money in many cases, or rather large amount of donated money in many cases to do this work, and to recognize that your job there is to honor what's going on with the taxpayer and with the donors, to work very hard for them. And then the third thing I would say is get out there, go to the conferences, make yourself known, and make sure that what you're saying is something new and not just a repetition of what was done before. Work hard, work bigger projects, work more creative things, do what you can on that front. But time and chance happen to everybody. And the tournament model can be extremely unfair. You can improve your attitude, you can take personal responsibility, but it's not going to work for everybody. It is a tournament model. The rewards only go to a few at the top. So another thing you can do if you find that you're opposed to this kind of system is to actually make sure that you're incorporating yourself into an academic system that counters this. Find a place that has a union and join that union. Find a system or a country, like Finland, for instance, that trains fewer people and makes it harder to get into various PhD programs so that more of them are going to be able to have academic positions afterwards. And fight for these kinds of things. If you don't like the tournament model system, you may not be able to end it, but you don't have to entirely tolerate it either. You can decide that you want a system where it's harder for people to get into the programs in the first place so that fewer people are trained, so that there's less of a tournament model effect on it. You can make sure that you're a member of a union that fights for all of you to get reasonably similar wages so that you don't have a few professors making the vast majority of the money and the rest living on sessional slave wages. These are the kinds of things you can do. But the last thing I would say is if you found yourself, you worked very hard, you've published, you've done all these things, but you're still not getting what it is you want out of this tournament model, recognize that if you've studied and did a PhD, you're capable of doing a lot more than just what you studied. You know how to write, you know how to think, you know how to communicate. In many cases, you know how to write computer programs. And you know how to work with large groups of people and actually command some respect. So you do not have to tolerate working at McDonald's wages if you've worked that hard and done that much, no matter how obscure or esoteric your field is. Never let yourself feel trapped by a tournament model. It's good to compete in them. There's a lot of good things that can come out of them, but they should not be tools that you allow yourself to be captured by, because therein lies the path of depression, sometimes suicidal ideation. It can be really difficult to endure when you've worked so hard and you've done so much. You've taken all the advice that I've given at the beginning of this, and you're still not getting a decent career. You're having to live in a place you don't want to live, work at a wage that's barely survivable, put off building a family and building a stable life for yourself. If you really love what you're doing and you can tolerate that, by all means, figure out the ways to live on less, figure out how to prosper in this situation by good money management, by the help of family, by living in smaller places. There are things you can do, but get out if it's not working for you. Seriously. There are so many amazing opportunities in governments. If you're a linguist, for instance, in New Zealand, the New Zealand government statistical organization often wants people because they know how to speak and they know how to do research. If you are in any academic field, you have that ability to write and to communicate, and you can share valuable and useful information to the world, especially if you've turned away from growing your own resentments and you've made sure that you've learned how to look at the world the way it is and not just the way you want it to be, but at the same time, not be resentful and store up your grievances against it. There are so many ways out of the sessional trap. Don't stay in it if you don't need to. The more people who take that advice, the more that aspect of the tournament model will go away, because it will be impossible to hire people in these horrible positions forever and ever. Like, it's getting worse and worse, especially in places like the United States. So those are the three things. I'll sum it up. You work in a tournament model. If you're okay with it, embrace it. Work it hard. Publish the articles. Go to conferences. Make meaningful contributions. Serve your nation. Serve your university. Serve your community. Excellent. If you have issues with the tournament model system, fight against it. Unionization, making sure that you limit the number of people who get into programs to the better people so that more of them are able to get positions afterwards. Or lastly, if none of that is working for you, get out. Go do something else with your life. You'll find yourself a lot happier. You'll find yourself better off, and you'll be able to meld what it is you were doing and embodying with your life with that which it is you believe. So with that, this has been Horizons of Thought. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you didn't, or you found some of it flip, or you found some of it frustrating, let me know in the comments, because I know a lot of you have suffered. A lot of you have gone through really difficult times as academics, and this simple description may not be enough for you. I'll be happy to talk to you. I'll be happy to write a response. I'll be happy to see if I can help you figure out what might be the right solution for you. There's a lot of good answers to this problem. You do not have to let yourself be trapped by it. And with that, I hope to see you in a few weeks. Bye.